Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Hello and welcome to our webinar. This is Marbella from NEDIC, the National Eating Disorder Information Center, and I'm proud to present today's webinar, In the Gaze of Others, Social Physique Anxiety, Exercise, and Eating Disorders. So this is just a reminder that if you have any questions, please type them into the chat box below. I'll be collecting them, and then at the end, I'll read them out to Eva, who will answer them to the best of her ability. And also a reminder that all the slides and the recording will be sent to everybody who is signed up on our webinar mailing list. So a little bit about Eva Pila. She's a PhD candidate in health and exercise psychology at the University of Toronto. Her research is focused on examining how body and weight-related self-conscious emotions impact health behaviors such as exercise, overall health, and well-being. Her research has focused on at-risk populations, including adolescent girls and women with obesity and breast cancer. Eva has become interested in body image and women's health early in her career and has over 6 years of involvement with various community projects that promote healthy, balanced living and positive body image, including eating disorder prevention and outreach programs. Eva is also one of our expert presenters who will be sharing her work at our biannual conference, Body Equity, Self-Esteem and the Balance, which will be taking place here in Toronto on April 16th and 17th. For more information and to register, please visit us at nedic.ca/conference-2015 or call us at 1-866-NEDIC-20. And I'll now pass it over to Eva.
Okay, thank you so much, Marbella, for that introduction, and thank you everyone for joining in on this webinar. I'll apologize for staring at the screen and not directly at the camera, just have a couple screens here to look at. So yeah, again, thank you. I'm so glad that I could have the opportunity to give this talk and share some of the research that we do in our lab at the University of Toronto. And I'm especially excited to see that there's a range of healthcare professionals and individuals who are present for the seminar. As researchers, we often discuss a lot of our work in sort of research communities, and our findings don't really make it out to consumers or individuals who can actually put this evidence into practice. So I'm so excited that you're tuning in for this talk and hoping that some of this information might be useful for you. And again, as Marbella said, the structure of the talk will just be, so I'll just present my slides, and then at the end, if you have any questions, you can type them throughout, and I'm happy to answer them at the end of the talk. And I'll also be providing, along with some theoretical information and some of the evidence that has come out from our lab and some of the research that has been done in this area, just some more practical strategies that hopefully can be used in your practices. So yeah, the vision I have for this webinar is to share the research evidence on social physique anxiety. So this is a topic that's very popular in the health and exercise psychology research fields, and I hope to share some of the work that we've been doing in our lab. So just as a disclaimer, this work is centered around body image from a health psychology and social psychology perspective. So most of it has been conducted in healthy weight average adults. So there's been limited work done in eating disorders and social physique anxiety specifically, but the topic, as I'm hoping you will see, is highly relevant and encompassing of disordered eating more generally. And then at the end, let's see here. Yeah, and so hopefully by the end of the talk, you'll be able to get a sense of that. So similar to the body image literature more broadly, this work draws from disordered eating perspectives and from social psychology principles regarding social human nature and how these sort of motives that we have as humans, when combined with the society and culture that we're in right now that's very appearance obsessed, can really help to perpetuate some negative outcomes that may set the stage for developing disordered eating and perpetuating existing disorders. So without further ado, I will introduce the first construct that we'll be talking about today. And so this is self-presentation. This might be something that you can relate to in a personal experiences. So self-presentation is basically a fancy term that tells us that all humans have an evolutionary drive to make a desirable impression on others. So looking at the specific definition, self-presentation is a natural process in which we all engage in to convey to others that we are a certain kind of person or possess certain kind of characteristics. So for example, I have some images here of social media. So this is a very common platform where we access our self-presentational tendencies. So on things like Facebook and Twitter, email and LinkedIn, whatever it is, these are areas in which we want to be perceived by others in a certain way. So if, for example, if we want to be perceived as exercisers, on Facebook we might check in at the gym, or we might put a post about our latest workout, and so on. And so this sends a message to the world that we are exercisers, and this comes back to us and makes us feel good because this is a socially desirable way of presenting ourselves. So self-presentational tendencies are also very obvious when we're first meeting someone. So let's say we want to present ourselves in a desirable way, and we want to manage how this person perceives us. So we don't want to say anything that might be perceived as, stupid, as we see in this little diagram here. We want to be perceived as friendly and funny and nice, and afterwards we may even beat ourselves up afterward for not making as good of an impression as we would have wanted, or not presenting ourselves in a way that we think represents us as humans. And so as we can see, self-presentation is a very ingrained part of social nature, and we are evolutionarily driven to want to present positively. So I'm sure this is no surprise to anyone. It's something that we can probably all relate to. So where self-presentation becomes concerning is when we feel uncertain about the impression that we've made, and we're not sure if we've actually made a favorable impression on others. We might imagine that others are negatively evaluating us, or negatively evaluating the impression that we're giving. And since self-presentation is such an important part of our ingrained social behavior, this can become quite a big issue. And looking at the literature, we see that it's very closely tied with social anxiety. So when we don't present ourselves in a way that we think is representative of us, we may feel socially anxious. And so in the previous examples that I mentioned on social media and first impressions of meeting someone, if the way we present does not match our ideal way of self-presenting, we may experience this social anxiety, which then perpetuates all these other negative outcomes. So an example, so kind of looking at these images here, an example of feeling social anxiety may be after a job interview that you think didn't go quite as well as it should have. So you didn't present yourself in a way that represents you as a person, and you may think that the interviewer doesn't really have a good sense of who you are. In another situation, we may feel that our friends are judging us or evaluating us negatively, and this can easily elicit social anxiety as well. In another situation, these two images here are mostly just presenting things that are pretty common in adolescence. And if you're working with adolescents, this might be no surprise. And so teens tend to be very concerned with their self-presentational efforts and how others perceive them, and this motive can be quite consuming at that age. So what I want to make sure that is clear in this message is that self-presentational concerns are a part of human nature. We all experience them to some sort of degree, and we may experience them differently at different life stages. As I mentioned, in adolescence, it's a really high time. But self-presentational concerns become problematic for the individuals who experience this sort of anxiety very acutely and very intensely, and experience it over long periods of time. So we'll talk a little bit more throughout this webinar about the subset of individuals and this at-risk group that we should be targeting in our intervention strategies and in practice. So when we think of individuals, falling along a normal distribution or a continuum of self-presentational concerns, we have, a small group that are pretty much not really concerned with how others perceive them. They may be a lot more easygoing. And then we have the middle group, so sort of where the vast majority of people fall, where they may experience this anxiety in certain situations, but for the most part are better able to manage it. And then we have, on the other end of the continuum, individuals for who this is a really big issue. And so this is sort of what I'll be talking about throughout. And so now that we've learned a little bit about self-presentational concerns, which may seem a little bit intuitive, now we have the groundwork for the rest of this talk, which will focus on self-presentational concerns around the body and physical appearance. So when we look at the literature and perhaps our own life experiences or experiences with clients, we can see that physical appearance is really highly relevant in self-presentation. We're very motivated and driven to present our physical appearance in a positive way. We want others to positively evaluate our body shape, our size, our weight, and our appearance in general. We are not only evolutionarily but also societally and culturally driven to prevent the physical self in this positive manner. So especially now with the recent movement towards fitness and being strong, and how that's sort of the message that's being perpetuated, there's an even higher pressure to present the self as physically fit or someone who exercises. So this becomes another part that's important for us to present. And these self-presentational concerns are key foundational elements that drive a lot of the body image concerns that we see in the literature. And so I want to talk a little bit about body image concerns more generally. When we think of body image in everyday language, we tend to overlook the many dimensions that actually encompass this construct. So based on the literature, body image is actually a very complex and multidimensional construct that spans much broader than just someone feeling good or bad about their bodies. So we know that body image has 4 really important dimensions, one being cognitive, the other being emotional, perceptual, and behavioral. So an example of cognitive aspect of body image might be your thoughts around your body. So I don't think my body is thin enough or muscular enough. So this is more of a negative cognition. And most of the work that's been done in body image has really focused on this cognition and this domain more generally. So it's looked at body dissatisfaction and satisfaction. I would say the vast majority of the body image literature has focused on this dichotomy of either being satisfied or dissatisfied with the body. And it's ignored a lot of these other dimensions, or the interplay between the 4 dimensions, which is actually really important, as we will see soon. So body image has also been studied in general affect or emotion. So feeling good or positive versus feeling bad or negative about the body or physical appearance. Not a lot of work has been done on more complex emotions, but I provided an example here. So I feel ashamed when others look at my body, rather than I feel negative when others look at my body. So here we see the really the big distinction with this intense shame emotion versus just general negative affect. And so I'll talk quite a bit about this area here. So social physique anxiety tends to fall in this emotional affective domain. We also have the perceptual domain, which is probably what a lot of us think of when we think of body image. So this is sort of that disordered eating or body dysmorphic sort of perception where an individual may perceive their body or appearance to be different than what it actually is in real life. So this is just one dimension of body image. Then we have the behavioral domain. So this domain is actually very important in what we study in our lab, which is physical activity and exercise. And it's really highly ingrained with all these other dimensions. So we know that individuals who may feel negatively or ashamed or whatnot may be more driven to pursue certain types of behaviors. So the examples I have here is I should weigh less, I should weigh myself, exercise more, and eat less. These are the typical sort of maladaptive behavioral outcomes that we might see. And so really what I want to get across with this construct here is the complexity and the interdimensional nature of body image, and how each one of these dimensions influences each other, and how this is important to kind of keep in mind when we're thinking of body image. So as I mentioned, I will be focusing on the affective dimension of body image. So again, it's really been looked at in a dichotomy, but what we do see from some research, particularly that's been conducted by some of our colleagues, is that when individuals are asked to describe their body image emotions, we see a very complex range of emotions being described. So we see individuals describing experiences of guilt and shame and envy and embarrassment and even pride on the positive side. So we see that body image emotions are quite complex, and there's what researchers describe as this web of emotion around our body. And so this is something that's pretty inherent to what we feel as humans, but may not be something that's really in our conscious awareness. And we might not realize or even be able to put a name towards some of the things that we're feeling. And so I won't get into this too much in this talk, but I'm hoping that you can kind of keep it in mind when we continue our talk on social physique anxiety. So, social physique anxiety is the focus of this talk, essentially. So, defining this term, essentially it is an anxiety that's caused by a perceived threat of others negatively evaluating our physique. So, we can see it's really tied to the self-presentational anxiety and social anxiety that we were talking about earlier in this talk. And I will be referring to it as SPA throughout, or social physique anxiety interchangeably. So as we can see, this sort of emotional experience occurs when we experience anxiety specific to the way that our bodies are being evaluated, or the way we perceive them to be evaluated. So, for example, if, and I'll give you some examples of what individuals have written in our research studies, but an example would be, going to the beach. You're in a very revealing outfit, and you may perceive that your body is being negatively evaluated. So that's sort of the construct that we'll be discussing. And so the work on social physique anxiety started in 1989, and since then has been tied with a lot of really important constructs in social psychology and psychopathology as well. And so it's a really important construct in the health behavior work that we do in our lab. So looking at some examples, our colleagues did a study on adolescent females and asked them to describe their experiences of social physique anxiety. So they were asked, so the researchers described this construct, and then participants wrote narratives on their experiences with this emotion. So I'll give you some examples. And again, the reason that it was studied in this group of participants was because this is where we really see the trademark experiences come out, and we see that girls at this age are really presenting high in social physique anxiety. And so Kylie, who is 13, and again we've used pseudonyms here, so these are not the participants' real names. Kylie here described her experience as this. So I don't know if they're looking at me, but I always think I have something wrong with me, like my hair sticking up, or I have mascara running down because I rubbed my eye. Or if they're looking at me and they're like, oh, she's so fat or something. And you just never know what they're thinking. And you feel kind of scared because I want them to think good about me, but you just never know what they're thinking. Another example by Janelle, who's 14 years old, she described her experiences of social physique anxiety as follows. So if there are guys looking at you, I always think that there's something wrong with me. You feel kind of scared because you want them to think good about you, but you just never know what they're thinking. And because I'm skinny, they will probably think I'm anorexic, but I'm not, and I want them to know that I'm not. So here we see, two very similar experiences of social physique anxiety described by these girls. So again, the focus is on how others are evaluating you. And they're both afraid that others may evaluate them in this way that they perceive to be negative. So these are, like I mentioned, more trademark experiences, and so you can just kind of keep these in mind as we go throughout. There's a couple more. So Kylie again describes, sometimes you think that someone is watching you and you feel a bit nervous because you don't know why they're looking at you, and you always think that they're looking at you in a bad way. And then Haley, who's 13, describes, usually when I'm out at a swimming pool, I feel like everyone's staring at me, and I don't know what they're thinking, and that makes me really nervous. So, again, we can probably relate to a lot of these experiences. They're part of our social nature. When it becomes an issue is when this tends to be the consuming, the social anxiety that's related to the physique that, may impact your behaviors or your social experiences. So, this diagram here is a sort of complicated looking synthesis of the factors that we have linked with SPA or social physique anxiety. So in a study that was published out of our lab, we essentially brought together all the studies that were ever conducted on social physique anxiety, which is about 130. And we sort of synthesized the literature and made sort of like a nomenological network or a map of what the literature was telling us so far. And this really allows us to see some of the gaps in the literature and some of the areas that we really need to do a little bit more work on. It also shows us what factors are conceptualized as predictors of social physique anxiety and things that we might be able to target in intervention strategies. And we also see some factors that are conceptualized as outcomes, or sort of the negative and maybe even positive outcomes that are associated with individuals who are likely to experience this negative anxiety. So looking here more generally, we see that social physique anxiety is in the middle, and we see some of the potential predictors being personal characteristics. I have PA here, that stands for physical activity. So the type of physical activity environment, the characteristics of the environment, maybe some social triggers, and so on. We also see some personal characteristics that might be moderating the experience, like gender, age, maturation, ethnicity, weight status. I'll describe these in a bit more detail next. And we also see some factors that have been conceptualized as outcomes. So we see competitive anxiety, disordered eating, increased stress, depression, and some factors that impact physical activity or exercise behaviors as well. And so we can see that social physique anxiety, when experienced chronically, can really have some negative impacts on these more general mental health variables. So now that we have an overview of the very complicated SPA experiences and the many factors that they're linked with, it's important to keep in mind that most of these relationships are bidirectional. And there are many factors that we have not yet looked at, and maybe you'll be able to come up with some of those during the rest of this talk. So the way that SPA, or social physique anxiety, has been studied in the literature has been using a standardized self-report scale. So there's been quite a bit of work on the scale, and as you know, in social psychology, the best way that we can measure these things, unfortunately, is by self-report. So there, this way of doing things is not always perfect, but it's a very good method that we have, and it's a very well accepted method in the literature for how we've been able to measure this construct. And I would say 95% of the work on social physique anxiety has used this scale or some sort of version of this scale. And so I'll give you some examples if you are able to read them on your own as well. And so typically we provide participants who are coming in to do a study with the scale, and they're asked to rate on a 1 to 5, ranging from not at all characteristic of me to extremely characteristic of me, the extent to which they agree with each statement. And so the first statement is, I am comfortable with the appearance of my physique or figure. Then we have, I would never worry about wearing clothes that make me look too thin or overweight. I wish I wasn't so uptight about my physique or figure. There are many times when I'm bothered by thoughts that other people are evaluating my physique and muscular development negatively, and so on. And so from this measure, we can kind of get a sense of the way that we measure social physique anxiety. And maybe coming from clinical backgrounds, there might be some other ways that you could think of sort of using this tool and adapting it to a more clinical setting to really assess the extent to which your clients or patients are experiencing social physique anxiety. And so what you might have noticed from that scale, and I can put it back up, is that all of these items are dispositional or trait in nature. So this scale basically makes the overarching assumption that individuals are going to be either prone to experiencing SPA or not prone to experiencing SPA, or falling somewhere in the middle. This scale really does not consider the situational factors or more state-like experiences of social physique anxiety. And so this is actually the way that SPA has been conceptualized since its inception in 1989. And so it's characterized as a stable characteristic. So either individuals are high in this anxiety or they are low in this anxiety. And this is similar with the general social anxiety literatures as well. I mean, this might not be actually the case. So we might be able to think of our own personal experiences or stories and narratives from clients where we might be able to see how spa may be, not be person specific. Maybe it depends on the situation. So for example, if you put someone in a very highly evaluative situation, they are, bound to experience this emotion regardless of how they feel in their daily lives. So for example, in a study that I worked on a few years ago, we brought participants into the lab to assess their social physique anxiety. And we asked them to wear a revealing exercise outfit, which basically consisted of a bra and really short exercise shorts. And then we told these participants that they were going to be modeling this outfit for a panel of judges, that we were going to be videotaping the way that the outfit fit them. And we wanted to assess, they didn't know this, but we wanted to assess social physique anxiety. So if we imagine ourselves in that sort of environment, I mean, who wouldn't feel socially anxious, no matter what? That kind of really brings up the question of, is this anxiety something that is more prone in certain individuals, or is it something that's situation specific? And some researchers from the University of British Columbia looked at this exact question. And so they examined adolescent girls ranging from 14 to 17 years old, and they tracked them for a period of a year. And they periodically measured their social physique anxiety. And what they found was that these girls were really describing very stable experiences of spa. And this is at a very important developmental time. So this is when girls are really experiencing a lot of physical changes, issues with puberty, and this is, if we were to see changes in spa, this would be the time that we would see them. So we hypothesize as researchers. And so this sort of gives us some evidence that we might be looking at a subset of at-risk individuals who are more prone to experiencing social physique anxiety, and therefore more prone to experiencing the negative outcomes that are associated with this sort of anxiety. And these individuals are also more likely to be appraising triggers in situations more negatively. So in the study that we did, that I just described with the bathing suit, or with the exercise attire, we may be able to see how individuals who are naturally high in social physique anxiety may really appraise that situation a lot more negatively than someone who is more neutral on the scale. So to look at the literature more specifically in terms of who is it that experiences social physique anxiety. So who is this at-risk group of individuals that we need to focus on? So when we look at some studies, we see that individuals who are in adolescence or young adulthood tend to experience spa a lot more intensely, and we also see that females report higher experiences of spa. So again, not really a surprise when we look at the eating disorder literature or the body image literature more generally. And the literature on gender and sex has really just been quite limited. So there's a lot of room for improvement in that area, so we can learn a bit more about it. Weight status is another area that has been looked at, and what we tend to see is that individuals with higher body mass index and higher body fat percentage experience higher social physique anxiety. So of course, when we consult our research, and we know that individuals who might fall outside of the social ideals of fitness or muscularity, for example, are more likely to experience body image concerns in general. And so this finding really is in line with what we already know. However, what we do see, and this is important in the sort of work that we're doing, is that perceived weight status and body fat are actually much more powerful predictors than actual weight or body fat percentage. So again, this ties in with that body dysmorphia or the eating disordered symptoms that we tend to see. So sort of that misperception of weight status. And I think that's really a good area that future research could focus on. There's been very little work looking at ethnicity, again, an area that needs a lot more work, and we tend to see from our limited work that Caucasians tend to report higher SPA compared with, with other groups. And these tend to be minority groups. So yeah, there definitely could be a lot more work done there to really understand the impact of ethnicity. But based on this, on these findings here, we have a little bit of evidence for who might be more at risk for experiencing SPA. And so the previous list of at-risk factors are, not really things that we can do anything about aside from keep an eye out for them. But what I want to focus the rest of this talk on is factors that we actually can change, and factors in our environment and our social structure that we can do something about to reduce these experiences of social physique anxiety. So this is where a lot of the work that we have done in exercise psychology and where that comes in. So social physique anxiety settings tend to be very highly evaluative and social in nature and involve the body in some sort of way. So exercise, physical education, sport environments are really highly predictive of SPA experiences. So the literature tells us that the greatest triggers of SPA include contexts that are putting the body on display. So again, this could be, going to the beach or, working out at a gym where, everyone's sort of visible and the body and the body's performance is very much a point of focus. Additionally, exercising in front of a mirror has been shown to be really highly triggering for social physique anxiety. And so again, when we think about gym classes and fitness classes in the gym in general, this is, the perfect environment to elicit these negative emotions. And in fact, the American College of Medicine guidelines have stipulations which all gyms must include at least 2 mirrors in their fitness facilities. So, this experience of SPA can really be perpetuated based on the environment in which we are being told to work out in. So, another aspect that comes up a lot is revealing attire. So no surprise, being in a bathing suit or being in outfits that don't cover the body can be really anxiety provoking, especially for individuals who have sort of body image concerns or may be more self-conscious in nature. And so again, we can think of physical education environments. So being told, telling students to wear a certain type of outfit might actually really perpetuate some negative anxieties that a student might be having. And so we'll talk more about some strategies with that. We also know that environments that highlight the physique or highlight the body or appearance are very negative. And so we know this from other areas of literature as well. But for example, having exercise classes or instructors in exercise videos who are really providing commentary that's really body focused rather than performance focused can be negative. So for example, having instructors in a fitness class providing commentary like, oh, keep working hard so we can get those beach bodies, or keep working hard so we can, lose that 5 pounds, or that we can have slimmer stomachs or whatnot. And so this sort of physique salient exercise class or environment in general is really highly predictive of experiences of SPA and a whole range of other negative outcomes that we've seen. So it's important to really reduce the appearance commentary and focus more on performance. So sending a message like, oh, let's keep working hard so we can improve our heart health. We've also done some interesting work in our lab that has looked at the presence of social support. So when we look at again, adolescent girls, the population that we tend to study SPA in, we see that adolescent girls who are in the company of peers tend to experience less social physique anxiety than when they're company of parents or strangers, for example. So, we might think of, for example, in a physical education setting, we might think of girls who tend to pair up together, or who tend to go do things together, or be sort of ingrained in that social partnership. And we can see how that actually might be beneficial in sort of helping them reduce some of these anxieties around their body. And it should be something that perhaps it's not best to sort of negatively impact that relationship, and just to let the girls use those sort of coping strategies. And again, I'm using examples in physical education and with adolescent girls, but from what we know, I think it's safe to say that we can extend these findings to other populations and to other settings where social physique anxiety may be an issue. So what we do tend to see in some of these exercise studies and other studies is that individuals who have concern over others evaluating their appearance, for example, like weightlifters and athletes in competition, have detriments in their performance, even when the focus is on performance rather than on physical appearance. So when we look at weightlifters, the focus of their task is not actually on appearance or the body, but because the body is in such a revealing and evaluative context, and then it's being judged on its form and on its muscularity, this does actually have huge detriments to performance and abilities to carry the sport out in the best way possible. So we see in one of the trademark studies done by Barbara Fredrickson on social physique anxiety, she tested individuals who came into the lab and wore either a bathing suit or a sweater. So we have the revealing versus the covered up attire, and they were asked to complete a series of math tasks. And what we see is that the individuals in the more revealing attire have more or lower scores on the math task than do individuals in the sweaters or more covered attire. So we can see that SPA can actually impact a lot of environments, and it can go as far as impacting academic performance. So if you have, for example, a student in a class who's really concerned with their appearance and concerned, for example, with gym class, which might be next period, that may have a negative impact or a detriment to their academic performance in class at that time. And again, this can span beyond the educational setting. So overall, what we see here is that concern over our physique evaluation can actually impact performance outcomes. So next I want to discuss a little bit about social physique anxiety and physical activity. So this tends to be a very complex relationship that we see in the literature. And so what we do see when looking at it more in terms of an overview, we see that social physique anxiety is positively linked with exercise motivation. So, this might be a good thing. Individuals who are highly anxious may be more motivated to exercise. So when we look at this further, we see that this is not actually the case. What we see is that individuals who are high in social physique anxiety tend to have more controlling types of motivation. So this is individuals who are more likely to exercise in order to reduce their feelings of guilt or to be able to present a desirable social image as an exerciser. So here we see that they're not exercising out of their own volition, they're exercising because they feel like they have to. And this really goes pretty far in perpetuating some of the negative beliefs that we have societally, and some of the things that we tend to see a lot in fitness settings, for example, or in general in society when we promote exercise. We think that blaming and shaming and guilting people into exercising will have beneficial impacts on exercise behavior. But what we see is that this is actually not the case at all. And what happens in the long term is that individuals who experience high social physique anxiety tend to avoid exercise more often. They report lower enjoyment and lower perceived competence in the exercise environment. And they also tend to avoid physique revealing context. So we see this a lot, again, in physical education classes. Girls who are high in social physique anxiety are more likely to skip out on gym class, to get their parents to write a note so they don't have to go, to cover themselves up, or make an excuse not to attend class. So here we see that SPA is actually quite detrimental to exercise behavior. Next, I want to discuss SPA in sport context. So this is another area where it's been studied quite a bit, because as we can imagine, individuals who are engaged in very competitive aesthetic sports like figure skating, gymnastics, wrestling, swimming, dance, these environments put a really high importance on body type, and they also provide a really high evaluative judgment. So for example, here in figure skating, or in gymnastics, we have judges that hold up signs in regards to the performance. And in these cases, the way that the body is presented is actually very highly tied with performance. And so we see that SPA is quite significantly higher in individuals who are involved in these aesthetic sports, and also sports that have a really big weight component, like wrestling. So when we think about what I mentioned initially in my disclaimer about this talk not focusing on eating disorders explicitly, it might start to make a bit more sense. So what we have learned now is a bit more about social physique anxiety, the environment in which it occurs, and the individuals who may be more prone to experiencing it. And so what we see is that although not a lot of research has been done looking at SPA and eating disorders, we see that SPA is very closely predictive and able to perpetuate eating disorders and other related mental health disorders. So in the work that has examined this relationship, we know that SPA is a really high risk factor for a lot of eating disorder correlates, including a drive for thinness, bulimic, anorexic symptomatology, this idea of obligatory exercise. So again, as we mentioned, with that very controlling type of motivation, the need, feelings of, I should exercise, or this is something I should be doing to compensate for, eating or whatever. And we also see a really strong link with body monitoring and body checking behaviors, and more generally with low self-esteem and depressive symptoms. So in fact, when we look at subclinical disorders, we see that disordered eating attitudes are very strongly linked with experiences of chronic SPA, or this trait dispositional type of SPA. And in subclinical disorders, we see that there is a 20 times higher, or it's 20 times more prevalent, high reports of social physique anxiety. And so we can see that social physique anxiety can be one associated factor that we can help to manage in a clinical or practical setting to help reduce the focus that we place on appearance and the body. So in a study that was conducted by my supervisor, we examined common coping mechanisms in a group, again, of adolescent girls. And so we examined how these girls were coping with experiences of social physique anxiety. So we asked them to describe an experience and then describe how they would cope with it. And so what we saw was a range of adaptive and maladaptive coping mechanisms that included behavioral avoidance. So again, this was avoiding certain environments, like trying on clothes or going to the beach or pool with friends, avoiding gym class, getting parents to write a note to get out of gym class. We see strategies including appearance management, so wearing oversized clothing, wrapping the body up at the beach, things like that. We also see some eating strategies, such as dieting, restricting food intake, binging, and purging. We also see some more adaptive strategies, like social support. So the girls in this study reported sharing strategies with their friends, or seeking parental support, or reading internet discussions for how they may be able to manage some of these consuming anxieties that they had around their bodies. And then again, we tend to see some more maladaptive outcomes or coping strategies, like substance abuse, and using physical activity as a way of controlling for that anxiety, or as a way of reducing that anxiety around the body. And when looking at cognitive strategies, we see some more adaptive patterns where participants reported deliberately ignoring others' comments, so avoiding sort of things that made them feel anxious, diverting their thoughts, or actively engaging in other activities. We see individuals persuade positive self-thought, reflection, journal writing, and rationalization. So again, some adaptive ways of coping with these anxieties. And we also see maybe some more negative outcomes like deflection and social comparisons, where girls were reporting this internal dialogue where these anxieties were causing them to compare constantly with others and put others down for personal gratification. So now that we have some strategies for how participants in our studies have coped with social physique anxiety, we were able to create a series of recommended strategies that's really highly tied to the evidence base. And so again, my supervisor and her colleagues published a set of strategies that were targeted towards physical education teachers. But again, these are really highly adaptable to any sort of context where social physique anxiety can be experienced. And I'll describe some of these strategies as we go on. The most important part of these strategies is to be able to identify situations that may increase SPA, as hopefully you will have gained from some of the previous slides, and also developing these strategies that might reduce anxiety and promote adaptive behavior. So the adaptive outcomes, linked with exercise, with eating behaviors, and with maybe reducing some of the avoidance of those social situations, which we tend to see quite often. So the first strategy that is strongly tied to the evidence base is increasing perceptions of control. So we know that individuals who experience body image concerns, also individuals with disordered eating, experience a lack of control over their behaviors linked with their body. And so really allowing individuals to gain this control back is going to be key in reducing some of this associated anxiety. So, again, these are from an adapted physical activity education context. So what we see here is strategies to increase the degree of choice in terms of attire and activities. So allowing students to wear, outfits that they're comfortable in. If outfits must be mandatory, to allowing them to have the same clothing options throughout, and options that don't sort of reveal the physique too much, including flexibility in how the attire is presented, and also in looking at the activities and reducing sort of activities that are focusing on appearance and increasing activities that are focusing on performance more so, and skill development. And what's also important is that the instructor, leader, or maybe mental health professional should also consider their own attire and their own way of presenting themselves. So this can be quite triggering to individuals who have these concerns. Strategy number 2 is similar, so it is focused on increasing self-efficacy beliefs. So self-efficacy, the way that we describe it, is a sort of specific confidence that's linked with a behavior of some sort. So we tend to think of presentational self-efficacy, so feeling confident about the way that you're presenting yourself, so kind of the opposite of social physique anxiety. And what we see is that individuals who are high in self-efficacy report more enjoyment and higher participation of these social activities, including exercise. And we see that improved performance self-efficacy is also very predictive of improving skill development and reducing these body-related concerns more generally. So a little bit more on increasing self-efficacy beliefs. Another really good way of doing this is to sort of look at the environment with which your clients or students or participants are working in, and to promote a sort of environment that emphasizes mastery and self-improvement. So what's important here is setting some sort of internal standards for individuals to follow. So in a physical education class, this could be allowing individuals to make their own specific goals and standards to follow, rather than providing a general catch-all goal for the entire class. And again, it's really important to emphasize the importance of progression and reducing the focus on outcome. So allowing individuals to build skills and build mastery experiences and be able to, have this confidence that will, in turn, reduce some of their physique anxieties. And what's great about focusing on progression and skill development is that it creates a really personally meaningful goal for each individual. And again, that's really highly tied with the positive or intrinsic sort of motivation that we see really closely tied with exercise behavior. And we know that it's also good for students with a whole range of skills. So depending on individuals who may be lower skilled or higher skilled, they will still be able to reap the benefits when we focus on this internal or self-specific progression. And strategy number 3 is challenging social comparisons. So social comparisons, or comparing ourselves with others, with the bodies of others, with the performance of others, is again, an integral part of human nature. We all do it in a lot of different environments. But what's important is rather than judging these social comparisons as they come in your mind, is to really challenge them, and encouraging your clients, your students, to challenge the automatic comparisons that come through, and really challenge these thoughts. So we see this in a lot of the media exposure studies. So it's very well known that individuals who are exposed to media images of thin ideal models or muscular models are going to socially compare more. So what's important here is sort of stopping those comparisons in their tracks and challenging them, and again, setting those internal standards. So that is what should be the status of comparison, rather than this external or catch-all standard. And again, this is really big, is avoiding and discouraging appearance commentary and outcome commentary. So again, no matter what the task is, whether it's physical education or anything else, any other work that you're doing with your clients, sort of discouraging the focus on appearance and focusing more on the progression, skill development, and also on performance outcomes. Strategy number 4, that should say number 4, is to foster social connection and acceptance. So as we saw in some of our literature on social support, we know that individuals who feel more socially connected and socially supported are less likely to experience SPA or to experience detrimental outcomes of SPA. So, in these sort of exercise classes or physical education environments, developing group-based or partner activities is linked with less appearance anxiety than when an individual is alone. Reducing spectators, this is a big one. If there is no reason for, spectators to be watching someone as their body's on display, it's important to reduce that socially evaluative environment that might be really negative for individuals who are high in SPA. Also, having sort of inclusion and interdependent activities that where everyone is working together and everyone's responsible for a very specific task. This will reduce negative evaluations towards others, because others are perceived as part of the same team, and it will really help to create that inclusive environment. And also to rotate groups regularly, and to keep in mind to keep that balance, mixed group of ability status, and this could be popularity in a physical education class, and to really have a wide range of acceptance and social inclusion to be able to foster those social relationships. So that brings me to the end of the strategies that I had and sort of the theoretical messages on social physique anxiety. I guess the take-home messages of what I'm hoping that you were able to get out of this talk were that self-presentation, social physique anxiety, and social comparisons are a really hardwired, ingrained part of our social human nature. So we can't judge ourselves or our clients or anyone for having these sort of motives or tendencies, because they, for the most part, are automatic and unconscious to us. So what is important is that we challenge these perceptions, and that we are aware of high-risk presentations of these tendencies. And so looking at that group who may be at high risk, and working with challenging these thoughts and these automatic tendencies. And hopefully you have now some simple strategies which can be implemented across physique salient settings. Again, the clinical research in this area is very, very limited, but we do have quite strong theoretical evidence that we can implement these strategies across a range of different settings. And really, I just want to leave you with the fact that we have to be really aware of our body-related emotions, and they're a very important and integral part to our health and well-being. And they are an area of body image that should, that we should really keep in our awareness, and remember that body-related emotions are really integral to our overall mental health outcomes and well-being. So that's pretty much all I have for you. I just want to thank you guys all for listening. I really, really hope that you were able to get something out of this talk, and I was able to present some of these research strategies and research evidence to you, and that you'd be able to apply them to a more practical setting. And I would just like to put up my email and my supervisor, Catherine Zabiston's email, in case you have any questions for us. I'm more than happy to answer them now as well, and a link to our lab website. Thank you.
Thank you, Ava. So we do have a couple of minutes left in the hour, so we're just going to follow up with a few questions that were submitted when people registered for the webinar. So the first question we have is, we're looking for more ways to facilitate direct discussion on eating disorders with clients. There's so much shame, stigma, and wariness for some clients. So I think this person is looking for a way, like, how do you approach eating disorders with clients?
Yep, so I mean, I can answer this question from my knowledge of eating disorders from the research literature, and by no means, is this from clinical experience. So absolutely, there is so much shame, secrecy, and resistance in eating disorders, and the stigma is really deeply ingrained and poses a really huge issue when facilitating discussion. And we see this across a range of weight-related disorders. It's really common in the obesity research as well. I would feel like, from what I know of the literature, that the best way to facilitate discussion might depend on the role of the facilitator, so the role that they have with the client. Also engaging a team of professionals that might be able to facilitate discussion from a variety of different lenses. Again, depending on the role of the facilitator, encouraging discussion indirectly around facets of the issue may be able to provide some indirect support. I would also feel that the important aspect of the facilitator is to really provide a safe, non-judgmental, stigma-free environment, and work on establishing rapport more generally, and sometimes offering a client a safe space to have their thoughts and sit with them and honor these without judgment and punishment might be in itself an important service.
Thank you. And then one more question. Is there any current research, or what is your opinion regarding social media health fads, such as popular progression photos and gym selfies?
Yeah, so this is a really good question that really ties in with the work that we've talked about on social physique anxiety and self-presentation. So the research literature is quite new in that area, so it's just starting to integrate social media and the influence of social media more generally. But what we do know from the general self-presentation literature is that, it's, again, a natural part. We want to present ourselves as exercisers. We want our friends and our family to know that we exercise regularly, that we went to the gym today, that, this is the progress that we're having with our bodies and our exercise. And so, this can really present an issue when for both the person who is posting these photos and also for the viewers of these photos. So again, it really increases that social physique anxiety, and increases that sort of controlled type of motivation to exercise. So sort of posting these images to be able to get feedback from others, and to be able to have others holding you accountable, is something that is an idea that's really perpetuated in our society for ways of staying with our exercise regime. And in reality, what helps to be most adaptive is to have internal goals, rather than relying on these self-presentational strategies to keep you exercising or motivated.
Thank you so much, Ava. Thank you to everyone for joining us today. And this is just a reminder that all the slides and a presentation recording will be sent out to everyone who's registered to the NETIC webinar mailing list. Thank you so much to Ava for sharing her expertise and knowledge with us at NETIC. And just a reminder, you can also catch her at our upcoming conference, Body Equity, Self-Esteem in the Balance. For more information, you can visit us at netic.ca/conference-2015, or call us at 1-866-NETIC-20. Thank you so much.
Thank you.